Our guest today is widely regarded as Australia's leading life coach. He's the founder of the Insecurity Project and the voice behind the popular 1 Minute Coach radio segment, which influences more than 750,000 Australians every day. Today, he's going to show us how insecurity kills sales and how you can overcome it to win sales now. Please put your hands together and help me welcome to the Win Sales Now podcast, our good friend, Jaemin Frazer.
What a lovely welcome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us. Well, the topic is insecurity, and we're on the Win Sales Now podcast. So how does insecurity kill sales?
I mean, money is how we ascribe value. So where there is an inherent lack of value ascribed to ourselves, it shows up in our relationship with money. If you're trying to put yourself out there in the marketplace and there's this deep fear that's unresolved, that on some level you're not good enough, you don't deserve, there's some lack, there's some inadequacy, then that actually shows up in your finances. It means that you don't demonstrate your value congruently. You hold back. You're not confident in putting yourself out there, and therefore people pick that up. Your certainty gives your clients permission to be certain. Where you show up with uncertainty, that's shown back to you with your client's uncertainty. So definitely has a big impact on sales.
Insecurity is rife across Australia. Whether we recognize it or not. How do people recognize their insecurities without being told by somebody else, hey, you're insecure? Because that's a tough conversation.
That's a tough conversation. People are insecure about being insecure. So very difficult. And I think most people are not willing to have a look under the hood and explore. But there comes a time when you stop running from your reality and are willing to face it. And when you face it and examine what's going on, it's the start of something very exciting, because if you can accurately understand the problem, well, then you're on your way to fixing it. So I think people see insecurity when they're willing to stop running and come out of hiding and be found. So it's an exciting stage in anyone's life.
It's an interesting strategy, that running. And what I find is that a lot of sales people and a lot of business people, they start to get into their 40s, and running takes a lot of physical energy. But when you're in your 40s, coming into 50s, your physical energy definitely tends to change, and you start to go from physically exhausting yourself to mentally exhausting yourself. And that mental exhaustion comes in. It tends to be that these insecurities start to bubble up. And we see it with our customers where they're on the sales roller coaster. They have highs and lows and depression followed by exhilaration. And we see that. We also see people, they quickly get to a certain level of sales and then they flatline. And then they just a constant. They constantly produce the same amount. They get heaps of education, but they don't move. Or the other ones go up and they just rapidly drop and they keep plummeting. So where do you tend to catch this out with your clients? Where do you see it as the coach?
Yeah, sure. I see it where it shows up as pain. So that can be, there's pain in each of those graphs that you described. Where someone's plateauing, there's pain because they're like, I can't understand why I'm not growing. Where they've had the high, now they're experiencing the low, there's a massive amount of pain. They can't understand why. But whatever it is, there's pain. And pain is such a wonderful gift because it's designed to tell us something is wrong. It's designed to move us from danger towards safety. If you put your hand on the fire, it's supposed to hurt. And that's a loving message to say, take your hand off the fire. So people come to me in financial pain, and it's beautiful because then they're willing to be wrong about some stuff. I love Mark Manson's quote. He says, listen, all change is preceded by being wrong. And so until people are ready to be wrong, well, then they just keep doing what they've always done. So pain is a great chance to go, hang on a minute, perhaps I haven't seen something here. Perhaps I'm hiding something or avoiding something. There's something hidden from my awareness. But if I keep going down this path, the pain only increases. I can't keep doing that. So whatever it takes, I'm ready for a different conversation and a willingness to explore what's actually showing up in my world.
We had it show up in our world. We were newly married. It would have been 2011. And I started coming home from work. We're living in Dubai. And I'd say to Nini, we've got to tighten our belts. And she's like, are you losing weight or something? I said, no, we've got to tighten our belts. We're married now. We're going to start putting money away for the future. Things are getting more expensive. And she's like, but why tighten your belts? And I was like, I just got to tighten your belt. So I'd go away. I'd come back from another flight. Let's go to the movies. Let's go out for dinner. Sorry, we can't afford that. We'll have to tighten our belt. She's like, what's this bloody tighten our belt about? And I said, oh, no, that's just what you say when you don't have enough money. And she said, who said that to you? And I thought, well, I'd heard it from my mum. So I rang mum and said, Mum, why do we say we've got to tighten our belt? And she explained the story. And she said, but you better ask your grandmother. So off to grandmother asked, I said, why have we got to tighten our belt? And so what I'd found was this saying in our family had been passed on through the generations. And the root cause of it came from the Depression. And my grandmother was one of 6 children. Her father walked out on her and her siblings and her mother. And it was her mother who had to raise 6 children in the middle of the Depression. And they had nothing. And the quote was, we've got to tighten our belt. And that showed up in our life in pain, although there was no financial problem at the time. But it swept through the generations. So we've seen it.
Yeah. But in your opinion, in your opinion, what do you think is the main cause of the insecurity that people are having?
Yeah, beautiful question. It's a universal challenge. We're sense-making creatures. We go into the world and we give meaning to our experience. We're always asking and answering 2 questions for every experience. Question 1, why did that happen? Question 2, what does it mean about me? So as a child, you're going through uncertainty, pain, disappointment. There's hard things happening. And these are the 2 questions you're reflecting on. Why did this happen? What does it mean about me? So children typically answer those questions personally. They direct the answers about themselves. And so they think that happened because they deserved it, they attracted it, they were bad, they were wrong. And so it begins this confirmation bias. Once we think that's true, we just look for evidence that that's true. And so begins this pattern of feeling inadequate based on the meaning we put on the defining moments of our life. So that happens for every single human being. I'm not sure there is a single person who has found a way to avoid that in some level growing up, to ascribe some kind of negative personal meaning. But it's beautiful because it gives us some challenge to rise against, some quest. The great joy of life is having beautiful problems to solve. If it was all easy, there would be no value. So it's one of the great challenges we each are given to work out if those stories are true, if they're serving us, can they be changed, can they be improved? So it's wonderful work, and work that leads to great joy and great life on the other side.
I really love that the quote that you just shared. Is like, people think about insecurity is the word didn't sound beautiful, but when you explain it, it sounds very beautiful to me. Like you can overcome it. Just take the opportunity to find something that we can overcome. I think that's beautiful. The way that you express it.
Yeah, and even more beautiful is when you overcome insecurity, then you get a more high quality problem to overcome. So many people are playing with very small problems. They've never worked out how to overcome their insecurity. So they're not even sure what they're capable of in the world.
Yeah.
If you can overcome insecurity, then you get a chance to go and solve more meaningful problems, problems that actually benefit the whole world, rather than dancing around this issue. Am I good enough? Do I deserve? What if I'm not okay? That's a very low level problem. It's a kindergarten problem.
Yeah.
So I describe it to people. So solve that problem so you can get a better problem, so you can go do some beautiful stuff.
I love that.
So I'm a business person. I'm out there making sales, and I come across my customer and I'm insecure. What are some of the thoughts that are going through my head as I'm sitting in front of the customer?
Yeah, wow. Am I going to be able to deliver what I'm saying? Am I good enough for this client? Am I over-promising and under-delivering? Do they really see value in what I'm presenting? They just undermine your certainty and your confidence to put yourself out there, your ability to solve the client's number one problem. So it sabotages your own communication skills and the confidence with which you deliver your values proposition.
And the emotion that comes from those thoughts. What emotions do people start to wrestle with?
Well, anxiety would obviously is a massive one. I love just pushing back when people say they've got an anxiety problem, because anxiety needs a backstory to survive. If you were to deconstruct anxiety just a little, you would discover that there must be an underlying belief that you are incapable of the challenge in front of you to feel anxiety. If you felt totally capable and totally confident in your capacity to deal with the challenge, it makes no sense to be anxious. We only feel anxious if underneath that we feel, oh, maybe I'm not good enough for this. So yeah, anxiety shows up, but it's not this problem that's unrelated or this thing that comes on you. It's purely evidence of unresolved insecurity. So anxiety, uncertainty, guilt, shame, where you feel like you've tricked someone into buying from you and you're not sure you can deliver value, that doesn't help you sleep well at night. So, yeah.
It's interesting because what they teach you in sales is to overpromise.
Really?
Overpromise. Grant Cardone talks about in his book, The 10X Rule, you got to make promises 10 times bigger, then you got to live up to it.
Wow. Well, sure, that works if you can be that person who can deliver that. And the only way you'll deliver a 10X problem is if you come to the table secure and you can access the best of you. You can access your resourcefulness, your creativity, your best skills. If you're insecure, well, that's, you might be brash around that promise to deliver 10 times, but that's going to create a massive amount of pressure and anxiety because you just fear you can't live up to that promise. And it's going to end in tears somewhere along the line.
So I'm going to sell you $100,000 product, and the normal person gets $100,000 return on investment, but I'm going to promise you $1 million.
There you go.
That's a pretty bold statement. And Grant Cardone, after he wrote the book, The 10X Rule, he wrote a book called Be Obsessed or Be Average. And what he said was that when people making these big promises, they started to freak out because it was so big that they didn't know how to live up to it after that. So do you think people have been accustomed to over-promising, but the fear is, can we deliver? And that kicks off the insecurity in the sales process?
Yeah, massively. I think we want to stand out in the market. We want to be delivering this rare offering, which means we want it to be squeaky clean. We want it to sound so good in the market. Otherwise, how are we going to get cut through? So I think we are accustomed to positioning ourselves with a great offering. But yeah, if you don't believe in your capacity to deliver it, at some point that you're going to sabotage. At some point, that's going to undermine your capacity to make that thing work in the real world. So that's why it's such an important subject. If you don't solve insecurity, it can't end well for you.
So if we switch roles, I'm no longer the seller, I'm the buyer.
Yeah.
And I'm looking through my buyer's eyes at a salesperson who's insecure. What are the things that the buyer starts to see in the seller? How do they pick up this insecurity?
I think they see it as neediness. I think if you're insecure, it shows up as desperation sometimes. It shows up as, I need you to work with me so I can feel good about myself. I need you to believe in me so that I can have confidence. And neediness is the most unattractive we can be in any relationship. Like, we have a very acute sense of neediness. It is not a pleasant experience when someone comes needy in any relationship. A romantic relationship, we're very aware of that. When someone's needy in that, you're repelled from that. In a business sense too, if someone's begging you for their business to work with them, it doesn't feel great. We love it when someone positions themselves as the prize. They're hard to work with. You got to jump through all hoops to get into their program. It looks like they don't need you at all. They're like, well, hang on a minute, this guy's got something different going on. So you can't really fake that. I think you have to, again, show up secure, confident, nothing to prove and nothing to defend, so that you can genuinely be the prize in any transaction and not have this neediness undermining and repelling your client.
Well, that sounded like my wife's dating strategy when I met her. Because we were working with Emirates Airline, and we were both working in economy, and I was operating the galley, and the galley operator prepares all the food and beverages for the customers. And what the cabin crew tend to do is they congregate at the galley before the flight, and you have your galley gossip. So you gossip about the previous people that you flew with. You gossip about the past customers, and they just tell bullshit stories the whole time. And anyway, the whole crew came together, and there was only one cabin crew who didn't come over and congregate, and it was Ninny.
Yes.
And, people, you don't really know their names because you're just meeting these people for the first time. So I said, Taiwan, come over to the galley. And I said, come and talk to the crew. And she said, no. And I said, why not? She said, I don't have to.
Wow.
And I was thrown back. So then I must have started jumping through her hoops, and I won the prize.
Incredible. Have you come across Oren Klaff's book, Pitch Anything?
I've read Flip the Script, but not Pitch Anything.
Yeah, well, that's where I got that language from, because it just helped me understand the psychology of that we want what we can't have. The more we can't have it, the more we want it. And so insecurity is the opposite of that, because it positions ourselves as free and easy and desperate. And it actually, you think people are going to be more open to working with you if you'll do anything. It turns out you just repel them. So to be the prize really requires a high level of confidence, because if you're going to say no, well, then you have to be prepared to walk away. And if you're insecure, you can't be prepared to walk away because you actually do need that. So you're just bluffing. But secure people can say, no, actually, I don't need you in my world. I don't need you in my business. If you want what I've got, sure, here's the rules. But you're playing this game my way, not your way.
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. I can walk away anytime.
You've got a ring on your finger. We have an agreement. We've got a contract. We've got babies. We've got a dog and a cat. Come on, you can't leave me like that.
It's so interesting you say that, because one of the things, we've been married 20 years, my wife and I, and one of the things we have promised each other from day one is that we will both still show up as the prize. So we say things to each other like, hey, listen, if you don't want to be the one that loves me the way I deserve, that's going to go badly for you. There's 10 other people outside waiting to take your place.
That's right.
Should you wish to forfeit it? So just, and to both be like that, it sounds like you're threatening each other, but it demands a high level of interaction. It demands you don't tolerate anyone's rubbish, and we have a great relationship as a result. So if you can both be the prize, my goodness, anything's possible.
Yeah.
We play these games at home, and I say, you said in our vows, you will love and obey me. She said, I didn't say that.
I never used the word obey. Okay.
What do you say to me?
I say I will respect you, but I didn't say obey.
And when I ask you to do something, you say, you know the risks, you know what you'll lose.
That's right.
How do you respond? I will say to Ninny, come on back to the kitchen, and she'll say, that's not my job. I'll say, it says it in the marriage. She says,
no,
it's not in there.
Yeah.
And it's true. One of the things that Telstra is having problems with in Australia is the new generation, the millennials. They're saying, we don't want contracts. Yeah. We want you to treat us so good that we will just stick around. We don't want to sign contracts. And over the last couple of years, they haven't been able to hold their contractual agreements. Wow. In these telephone contracts. They're just saying, no, I'm not putting up with that. And we do this with our providers as well. I'll say to them, you can make me sign a contract, but you've got to live up to it as well. Because a lot of them providers, they think just because you've signed it, they don't have to do anything else. Yeah, but they still have to live up to it, because how we do it in business these days is we vote with our purchases, and we can either keep purchasing or not, and we can purchase somewhere else. Yeah. So very important. Yeah. So what do you see in insecurity? How have you seen this in the marketplace?
I think when Jaemin mentioned about, when people have those anxiety, when this insecurity start really kicking in, and I think we see that a lot in our clients who came to us, into the business, they start having those negative self-talk about, I'm not good enough, I couldn't run this business, all this little things. So I think that is really fascinating when Jaemin mentioned that, what he's seeing is in his field. Yeah, it's really, I think there's all the connections into it.
So you're the expert here. You speak to 750,000 people per day on the 1 Minute Coach. You're regarded widely as Australia's leading life coach, and you've tripled your income by dealing with your own insecurities. So what's your backstory? And what did you have to overcome, and how did you do it?
Sure. So just briefly, I moved my family to Germany for 9 months in 2016 off the back of reading Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. Time, money, mobility, the three luxuries. I'm like, I'm in. So I rang my wife on the Gold Coast. I was on the Gold Coast. She was at home in Goulburn after I read that book and said, I reckon we can do this. I reckon we can just jet around the world and I can run my business. She's like, can you? Like, yep. All right, let's do it. So we got on the plane with one person signed up to my first online coaching program and no plan B. And I thought it would be fine. And it was a lot harder than I thought. And halfway through that experience, I ran out of money. And it was not from lack of effort. I was doing everything I knew to create business growth and 100% committed to that. And I noticed that, and my wife pointed out that my track record around money was horrible. And I did not want to hear that, but I couldn't run away from it anymore. And I discovered that there was almost part of me that resisted more money, that had was sabotaging more sales, that was resisting getting better clients. And it just didn't make any sense to me until I explored my own insecurity around this. And I discovered that part of the modeling and part of my own agreement with money when I was growing up was you can't be rich and godly. So you can't be a good person and a rich person. So, growing up, all the good people we knew were poor. All the rich people were pricks. They were greedy. They were selfish. They trod on people. And so I decided that's true. If I'm going to be a good person, I'm going to be a poor person. And that was this rock solid agreement. And so there was this insecurity that I couldn't handle money, that money would corrupt me, that if I would get more money, it would turn me into a bad person. And so therefore, my own unconscious was protecting me from the thing I was afraid of by saying, Jaemin, you do not have permission to earn more money. So until I actually faced that, became aware of it, and then did the work of deconstructing that story, of undoing that agreement and rewriting the script and giving myself permission to actually be good and rich, then I couldn't move forward. So having done that work, it's just extraordinary because there's abundance all around us at all times, but I was locking myself out of that experience. So 3 weeks after I did that work, off the back of the same effort and the same intensity and the same focus, I earned more money in the last 3 months of that year than I'd done the previous 3 years. It was just an extraordinary experience of, now it is okay. Now the handbrake's off. Now it's fine to move forward and value myself appropriately because that insecurity is out of the way.
You mentioned the book, The 4-Hour Work Week. And I read the book probably around about the same time. And I've read the blogs that have followed of people who've taken a similar journey to you. Sure. And they said, this is full of crap, the 4-Hour Work Week. It doesn't work.
Wow.
How many of those people do you think would have been impacted by their own insecurities, the people who it didn't work for?
This is such an interesting point. I was only having a conversation with a client just before we got on this around the fact that, business frameworks work. They're proven to work. But the thing that often falls down in the framework is not the framework itself, is the person's ability to apply the framework. They get in their own way. So the 4-Hour Work Week is a beautiful framework. It does work. The problem is not the framework. The problem is when a person's beliefs and insecurities and stories runs up against that framework and locks them out of fully applying it. So I think that's true for any framework anywhere. So there comes a point where you can have the mechanics down pat, your marketing plan, your business plan, your strategic plans, all squeaky clean, but you haven't done the personal development plan. That's the gap. That's the thing that's in the way. That's what you're banging your head on, and will continue to be the thing you bang your head on. And then if you don't address it, you'll deceive yourself and think, the problem is the framework. Bloody 4-Hour Work Week. That book doesn't even work. I need a better book. What's the next book I can read? What's the next shiny object I can go on to?
The 5-Hour Work Week.
The 5-Hour Work Week. That's what I need. Give me that book. Yeah.
One of the things we say to our clients is that your attitude is your angle of approach. Okay. And in aviation, the attitude is the pitch of the aircraft as it's taking off or it's coming into land. And in business, we know that if you're approaching a customer with an attitude of insecurity, it changes the whole customer experience.
No doubt.
And it's quite fascinating. I have never personally had insecurity in prospecting.
Okay.
Because I was trained at an early age. You go out and you knock on doors, you ring on bills.
Mm.
But there was definitely other insecurities along the way. And you get those no's and you start to question your belief. You go, well, I'm really good at prospecting until I get the no.
Sure.
And then it definitely changes your angle of approach. And you're going to get a lot of no before you get a yes in business. So how can people work on their insecurities today? What can they do starting today to start to develop that response?
Sure. Well, I think first up, just to frame people's expectations, there is some hard work. This is perhaps some of the most difficult personal development work you will do. But as I say to people all the time, hard is not the problem. People are already doing hard. People do hard stuff every day. They do hard stuff that doesn't work. So if you're doing hard anyway, you might as well do hard stuff that works. So there is a process. But the way into the process is always to name your fears, to be clear around what the problem is you're actually trying to solve. So typically people are not clear around the problem. They think it's a money problem, a sales problem, a business problem, a strategic problem, when if they were to step back and observe it more clearly, that's not the problem. That's where it's showing up. The problem is their own belief system, their own fear of inadequacy, their own opinion of themselves. So Yoda says, named must your fear be, before banish it you can. Jordan Peterson says, be precise in your speech. Things that go unnamed become monsters and consume you. So just that step in itself, to stop running and to name insecurity as a problem that demands action now, is the way into the process of solving this problem.
Have you got any insecurities?
Sometimes, be honest. Yeah, sometimes.
What is it? What's your insecurity?
Sometimes I feel a little bit insecure if I have to speak with the new clients.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because doing selling is not my expertise. It's Daniel's expertise, but it's not mine.
Sure.
So I think in some way I will compare myself to him. And that did bring me some insecurity, because I don't want to use the word I want to beat him, but I just want to be as good as.
She just wants to beat me up.
But I do want to be as good as him. So sometimes I will, have that insecurity coming to me. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting to notice that insecurity is often domain specific. So you might be secure in one area of your life, but then it might show up in another. So it's not saying across the board everything you're insecure. Someone who might be secure about earning $200,000, but insecure about earning $400,000. Someone who's running a team of 5 might be secure about that, but insecure about running a team of 20. So every new layer of growth opens up new insecurities. We're secure about what we've already achieved and proved to ourselves we're capable of, but that growth pushes us forward into new uncertainties, and therefore new insecurities show up. So I love that expectation built into this process to go, it's an ongoing thing. And these practices for solving insecurity are relevant, whatever level of growth you're at and wherever insecurity shows up.
Yeah.
So for the people who are not dealing with their insecurities today, what does the future look like for them 12 or 18 months down the track?
Well, I don't think it's dramatic to say that insecurity left unaddressed leads to madness. I think it weakens us in every way, shape, and form. It causes inherently good, beautiful, creative people to make decisions that ultimately hurt themselves and others. And the only way of describing that is madness, because insecurity is built on a work of fiction. So it's not actually true. It just becomes true, and it becomes this prison. So I think, that the future, it's a serious issue. When I uncovered insecurity for the first time in my own life, it was when I went to write my first book, and there was this mountain of fear there that if I put myself out there, what happens if it's not good, if no one likes it, if I'm rejected, and it was so strong in me. I thought, if I don't deal with this, this will consume me. This will leave me as a shell of a person. This will pull me back from my most important work in the world. So, I don't think that's being dramatic at all. I think that's the challenge. It is a really important subject, and it dehumanizes us to leave it intact.
You said something just a few moments ago about people working hard. Can people work too hard. So what I mean by that is that they have an insecurity, they haven't identified it, and they become like a try hard. They've just got to try harder than everybody else just to get the same result.
Well, that's exactly what happens. It's like you're driving the car with the handbrake on because you are fighting against yourself. There is a part of you which has not given you permission to succeed, and you have to constantly dominate, suppress, win over that part. So it's so inefficient. Whereas when you solve insecurity, it's like taking the handbrake off. You're moving forward with full permission to be the person you want to be in the world. You have access to success. That's ease and flow. So yeah, 100% right. You're working far harder than you need to for the results that you're getting if you're fighting against yourself to get them.
So for a salesperson, they've had insecurity. They're putting a lot of energy and effort in getting very little reward, and they take that handbrake off. The insecurity gets left behind. They move forward. What's the transformation that takes place? I know that you've tripled your income. What else are you seeing in the marketplace for salespeople and business owners?
Yeah. I mean, there's amazing things happen. You know, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. When the salesperson's ready, the client appears.
Or the podcast appears.
Absolutely. When you come ready, then the opportunities are there. They've always been there, but you haven't always been ready. So I think getting ready, showing up where you are capable to be the person you want to be, it's incredible what opens up in the world. It's incredible how natural those conversations are. The thing I've loved most, sure, tripling income is a beautiful experience, but the conversations with ideal clients who I know that I can serve, I know I can solve their biggest problem, I know I can solve it very well. They're just such lovely conversations. They don't feel like sales conversations. They feel like two people solving a problem. And it's a lovely experience to have that congruence and feel like, wow, we are both enjoying this experience 100%. We're both so grateful to have this conversation. So that, to me, I love that, just to feel like I'm enjoying the process and it feels congruent and authentic. Authentic. Authenticity and congruent.
I love that word, congruent. You know, in my mind, it's like driving down the street and all the lights are green, all systems go. You know, you take action, and that attitude that you have supports it. You feel safe, you feel confident, you feel courageous. You hear the no's, you accept it as part of the process, and you just keep moving forward. You know, you're just like stealing inches constantly. Now you're flat out taking notes here.
Yep.
I can see this. So what's your next question?
Just out of curiosity, like what kind of impact you have seen in person when they are facing insecurity, or, you know, like what kind of scenario will look like? Is on the mentally level or can be a physical level? What kind of?
Oh, great. Yeah, great question. So I have a diagnostic tool on my website at the moment. You know, find out where insecurity is costing you the most, and it shows up across 5 key indicators. Health. So it often shows up as extra weight. It often shows up as lack of energy, poor sleep, sometimes skin conditions, weird health condition, autoimmune, chronic fatigue, all kinds of stuff where doctors are like, I don't know, beats me. Just try and stop stressing so much. You know, that kind of stuff.
Well, that's great advice, isn't it?
No, great advice.
Try to stop stressing.
And that was the advice. My wife had psoriasis for a time, and that was the doctor said, well, no, there's no cure for this. Stress related. So just try and stop stressing. Oh, thanks for that. That's excellent. Why didn't I think of that? But watching her deal with the deeper issue around why is that showing up in her world, resolving the internal conflict and the insecurity piece, and her skin is our biggest organism. It's our biggest, what is it? Our biggest,
I can tell you there's a lot of it.
There's a lot of it. Our biggest organ, there it is. You know, so it's the thing most connected to every other part of us. So no wonder it shows up dysfunction. It shows up internal conflict. And when that internal conflict is clean and clear, no wonder the skin shows up clean and clear. So yeah, extra weight, you know, when you don't have permission to show up at your best, extra weight is a great place to hide. You show up 5 or 10 kilos overweight. Well, no one's expecting you to be awesome. You're not expecting yourself to be awesome. So there's this
but I'm thick-skinned.
big boned. Yeah. Sure. But secure people are attractive people. They're not hiding. They're bringing their best to the world. So it shows up in relationships. It shows up tolerating dysfunction, getting treated badly, being in situations where you don't enjoy the conversations, you don't enjoy the people in your world, but you can't be assertive because if you're assertive, you might lose them altogether and then you'd have no one. So, it shows up in business. Obviously, we've talked about that. It shows up in finance. Obviously, I think money's the reward you get for accurately understanding your value in the world. And so when you've devalued yourself, that shows up in your relationship with money. So it shows up everywhere, I think.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful question.
Yeah.
Very good question. Now, for the people who are watching this right now, where can they take this test that you've been talking about? And where can they follow you to learn more about what you're doing at the Insecurity Project?
Sure. So if they were to Google the Insecurity Project, they would find my website and my podcast. There's a book due out shortly. The test is very visible on the homepage of my website. That'll give you an opportunity not to just diagnose the problem, but to see what these 7 practices for overcoming insecurity really are, because there's no point getting clear about what's wrong if you can't also see how to fix it. So that's how they'd find me.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Well, what we'll do for our guest today, we will share Jaemin Frazer's details below. So after you've watched this video, click the link below, go straight to his website, and be sure to take the online test and discover your own insecurities. I personally took it a couple of weeks ago, and it's quite insightful. And remember that one new idea is enough to turn around your business. And I'm a big believer in dealing with your mental and emotional blockages.
Yep.
And I know that there's so many people out there who have learned how to sell professionally. They go to every sales training. They go to all the conferences. They read all the books, but their results don't change. And one of the major things in my belief, it's that attitude and it's that having insecurity that's really holding them back.
Yeah.
So be sure to follow Jaemin.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts there for you, wife?
Just thank you very much for joining us today. And I think personally, I feel I learned a lot, from different perspective, talking about the insecurity, how that affecting our, physically and mentally. And I'm going to do the test later on today.
Excellent.
To see.
We'll put the link below as well. Well, thanks for joining us today, Jaemin, and we'll see you soon. Have a wonderful day.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Bye now.